Good morning, gentlemen. Today we're going to be going over the mini lab properties ionic compounds. Now, as a reminder, I did go over this in class as well as on the lecture online. So if you are unable to get complete notes or you need to review the 5 properties, please go do so now. But before you get into that, please make sure that before watching this video, you review the ionic properties, make sure you have your notes, but also answer these pre-lab questions. Now, you should be able to answer these pre-lab questions without even watching the lecture because a lot of it's review. So for example, question number 1 is what kinds of elements form ionic compounds? Question number 2 is I want you in your own words to tell me what is an ionic bond. Think about our electron dot structures. So in an ionic bond, when I'm combining that compound, are my electrons being shared like my covalent, or what is occurring? Make sure you use the words cation and anion to distinguish your electron dot structure explanation. Number 3 is, would you expect ionic compounds to conduct electricity? Yes or no? Again, that's a property, so make sure that if you need to look that up, you should be able to, but remember ionic compounds have a metal, so that might help. And then at number 4, looking at data table number 1. And when I talk about data table number 1, I'm talking about this table right here. I want you to tell me how the mystery metal is different than my other 3 ionic compounds. Notice it's mystery molecular. That means I'm working with the covalent down here. All right, so please make sure you go and do that, and then I'm gonna go through each station with you. Now, 2 stations are going to be done in the lab, and I will have pictures and I'll have videos associated with those, but other 2 stations will be purely based on you researching, so I will go into detail when we get to those, but let's begin with station number 1. Now, station number 1 requires the use of a microscope. I know this is kind of a weird angle. I have the procedures written down here, so I will show you what this looks like and I will get it set up. Now, because I'm dealing with a microscope, I will be changing the lens, making sure it's a clear image. So I will attach photos of what the crystal kind of looks like, and you can make observations based on that. You can find the procedure on your lab guide. So I'm going to follow that with you. I will show you how I prepare a slide, how I put it on my microscope, and how I was focusing it. But what your job is I will show you the copper 2 sulfate, what that looks like, and you'll make some descriptive observations. And then I'll show you what it looks like under the microscope. Now, it might be really difficult to tell, but what you should notice, at least in the first 3, a good crystalline structure, and then we'll compare that with our mystery molecular compound. So let's prepare the slides and look at the granules, and let's make our observations. I will be taking this one at a time. So I will go through in order, starting at number 1. We're going to look at our copper sulfate. Now, to prepare my slide, I only need a few grains. On my slide here, this little glass piece, so I need about 4 to 5. These are grains of copper sulfate, which you might notice, these are quite big grains. So what I want you to do is I want you to explain the color. I know it's hard to do the texture, so I'll bring this a little bit closer. There's like some texture on it. And explain like luster. Remember, luster is shininess. But there is my copper 2 sulfate. The next slide that I'm going to prepare, I'm going to do number 2 here, is going to be my potassium permanganate. Now, my potassium permanganate, I'm going to follow the same steps. I'm only going to put a couple grains. Okay, it's a little bit harder. Here, it might be a little bit difficult to get that luster. There we go. So here's my grains. That blue should not be in there. It might be from my copper, but this should be able to help you kind of get a sense of what they look like, any luster. They are small. They do have a grainy texture similar to kind of like sand. So I hope that helps with that texture. The next one we're going to do is our nickel 2 sulfate. Again, I'm only going to use a couple of grains. Separate them out, make sure there's no overlap. Just like our last time, I'm going to show you what the grains kind of look up close. I'm going to get my camera into focus, there we go. So you should be able to kind of get a sense. Again, this texture is a little bit thicker than salt, but it's similar where I could rub my fingers through it. Okay. And the last slide that we're going to prepare is our mystery molecular compound. Now our mystery molecular compound is C18H36O2. So I'm going to put a couple on here. Make sure there's no overlap. Hopefully, there we go. This is our mystery molecular compound, so you should be able to make some observations. But notice, steal one from here. Oh goodness, there we go. Notice it's very flat, and it's not as grainy as my other ones. All right, so now that I have my slides prepared, I'm gonna put these under the microscope. I'm going to attach photos. Hopefully that they're clear to see, but if you're having a difficult time seeing them, please let me know, but I will skip ahead for that. I do wanna show you what I'm working on with the microscope so that way it's easier to tell. If you've never dealt with a microscope before, here is where I have my table. I have my lens on the bottom. These are my opticals. This is how I can go forward and like zoom in, zoom out, and this is how I can do a finer touch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the lowest setting, which is my red, because you always want to start low and then work your way up. And I'm going to clip my slide into place. Next, I'm going to look through my lens, and I'm going to kind of focus in on it. All right, this one may be a little bit hard to tell because it is a thicker one. So I'm now going to move into my next highest setting, which in this case is my yellow. Now that I have it in my highest setting, I can zoom in and out, do a finer detail. Now it's hard to tell, but I will attach the photo, and I will attach like a better photo of copper so that way you can kind of see up close and personal. Taking it with my phone. See if I can get a photo. Okay, it is very difficult to get a photo, so I will see if I can get photos with the other ones, but if I cannot, I will show you what it should look like in a photo I get on Google, okay? All right, so I'm going to post the photos, and what I want you to do is, how did the molecular compound look different from my ionic under the microscope? So I will look that up. The next station we're going to do is go over solubility. So I already attached the grains. You should have had station 1 done to this point. I'm going to be following the procedure, and then I will go ahead and I'll shake both those test tubes. I'll have a time lapse in here so you can see that. But let's get into measuring the chemicals that we're working with. Now what I'm going to do is follow the procedure for my part 2. So I need to measure out 0.5 grams of sample number 3. The reason sample number 3 is this is what we used in the first part with the microscopes. It's just that blue. So I'm going to use a spoon and I need 0.5 grams, which really isn't that much. That's enough for that. For what I told people in class, like it is kind of hard just to get to that 0.5 exactly. So as long as it's near, that is fantastic. I'm adding like 1 grain at a time here, so I feel like that just shows you how small of an amount this is. 1 grain. Okay, add 1 individual grain. Love this. 1 individual grain. Okay, close enough. I'm not gonna sit here and take off. So here we have 0.5 grams, which as I said, that's not a whole lot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm gonna pour it into my test tube. My test tube is a little bit wet, but that's fine because I'm gonna add that water. So I pour that in. I'm going to set this aside for now because I'm going to prepare my other test tube. So my next test tube is going to have my molecular. So here is with my molecular, and it's the same one that we used in the last lab again, that with the microscope. So again, I need 0.5 grams. These are a little bit bigger chunks, so it is a little bit easier to get closer. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to consider that close enough. Again, it is not that big of an amount that I actually have in comparison. So just like the same, what I did last time, I'm going to put that in a test tube. I'm going to fill them up with water, and then about halfway, so let me show you how that does. And then I'm going to put some stoppers on it. I have them filled up halfway with water. And now I am going to shake them for 2 minutes. So I'll shake both of them at the same time, and then we'll compare what we see. Time-lapse sped things up for you, but it has been 2 minutes of shaking. So now we're going to compare the solubility between my ionic compound and my covalent or molecular compound. Here we go, is my ionic compound. So before I had it filled with water and I could see the blue on the bottom, but now I don't really see that. The second one is our molecular compound. So again, I still have this white in the beginning. So make observations on your handout about the solubility between these. The last 2 stations are conductivity and melting points, and you will be looking this information up on your iPad. Recall what we discussed in class about the different types of these properties of what we see with our melting points, what we see with our conductivity, but you're going to look this up using your iPad, just the internet, and if you need any help, please let me know. But other than that, there are lab stations. I do have pictures of the chemical. It's just so you kind of get a close-up of that crystalline structure to compare them. But please let me know if the pictures are not clear enough for you. But other than that, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.